Speaker Termai, ita com respeito a me convida Sr. Brook Schofield, NSRC Network Engineer and Trainer, to apresenta Identity and Privacy, New Mistakes for an Online War. Batempo no fating a minha entrega.
Hello everyone, I'm Brook. You're going to have to listen to my Australian accent for a while, so I'll talk for a little bit just to try and tune your ear in, and also that of the translator, and he's doing an exceptional job. So for those listening to the translation, he's doing a great job, and I hope you can understand what I'm talking about. That's my last slide rather than my first one. Can we go backwards in time? Well, there you go. So you've seen it all now. There will be no time for questions because we're already running late. You can try and scan that. It also appears at the end of the presentation so that you can send me a WhatsApp or you can email me. Now I've got two buttons and clearly one goes forwards and one goes backwards. That one goes forwards. So what we're talking about now and what I am involved in is identity rather than the network and services. And so the identity is a way you express yourself with a series of attributes. There's things about you. Your name can be your age, your affiliation, nationality, things like that. And you express it through just existing, like we know you exist, but there's also sort of forms of identity that codify that. Like your birth certificate, you might have a school ID or a library card, a formalised driver's licence, and even a passport. And so the question is, why should NOG, network operators, care about identity? Because it's the thing that links people to services and it links people to people. And so the whole reason you run a network is so people get access to services, right? Because ping is not really a service that the end user is interested in, right? They don't care about DNS, they want connectivity and they want to get access to services. And increasingly, you need to have some type of identity to access a service, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Facebook. And so traditionally, identity has been, it existed in like a physical card. This is an example of a Tasmanian driver's license. It contains the information that you need, but sometimes too much information, right? It's tied to an individual. It's offline because it gets printed by the transport department. You hand it over to a police officer when they pull you over. That's the actual reason that it gets created. It's got some security features to make sure it's really you. And it has an expiry date, so that it has to get renewed every so often. And you, as the holder of this, although transport has given it to you, you can choose who to share it with. Sometimes people will want to know your identity, but you don't have to hand it over, right? The downside is, this was developed for driving a car, but often this is sort of one of the only forms of identity people carry. So you reuse it to get into nightclubs. You reuse it to buy alcohol in the Northern Territory. And so it has more information on there than is required for these purposes. This one contains your home address. It includes your date of birth rather than just your age. So there's too much about you, codified in this, but it's the only option you have. And so, as part of this extension, we've gone to the point of this know your customer, sometimes know your client. So this is an idea of organisations collecting information about you so they can be assured they're always dealing with you. Now, once upon a time when you paid with physical money and you used to always meet people in person, there was no need for this know your customer. You turned up, you gave someone cash, they saw you, you saw them, you took away the item, and so the need for expressing an identity in a transaction like that didn't exist. But equally, as we move towards online services, you're not interacting with a human to buy those services, and so your purchase is not necessarily physical either. And so there isn't necessarily this correlation between the payment and the purchaser. So you could use, your children could use your credit card to get access to things. They might not have their own. Or you could use your spouse's payment methods. And so these things that get designed to try and stop fraud, heavily driven by sort of government and banking. Telcos now in Australia have this information, but as a result, very famously in Australia, one of the two largest telcos in Australia was retaining a lot of information about Australians that they did not need to hold. That information got leaked, and so driver's licenses and passports for a vast number of people in Australia had to get reissued because this information entered the public domain. Now the discourse is hackers leaked this information. This also happened with our national airline. Hackers released the information, but it's the organisation itself had access to your information. They did not adequately protect that information and it leaked. And this is information that you can't change. So you can sort of change an email address, but it's a bit of a pain because other people already know it. You can sort of change your phone number, right? But that's a bit of a pain because people use it. You can sort of change your home address, but that requires buying a completely different house. So when this information leaks, it's very difficult to sort of recover from. And so the extension now is digital identity, right? Your email address, your Facebook and WhatsApp accounts. In Australia, we have a thing called MyGov ID. Did they change the name? I think they might have. Maybe it's called My ID now. It's sort of slightly changing. It keeps getting relaunched. But you often have multiple digital identities that you sometimes link. If you're part of a Meta ecosystem, they're all automatically linked for you. And so they get validated in real time and they get validated back to that authority. And so, but these things sort of have all or nothing attributes. It's whatever Meta knows about you, shared to other services in the Meta ecosystem, or everything that a service knows about you shared with, its chosen partners. But you get these in the format of either centralized, in the Facebook world, where your account is managed by Facebook, delegated, where you have this hierarchy, where it's distributed to organizations under an umbrella, or you've got something distributed. And I'll talk about those in a tick. So blockchain is a way that you have this distributed identity. And so a public ledger of information. I don't know if you've had stuff covered in blockchain in previous NOGs or whether people are interested in that. But you've got distributed query points for it. It's very buzzword friendly, right? Verifiable credentials, so you can actually link a hash of your real driver's license or your real passport into this environment so that you can actually use credentials that can be vetted by a third party. You often have an application, a digital wallet to be able to manage this. And it has a benefit of something called zero knowledge. So instead of just having to give a direct attribute about you, like it might ask, are you a resident in Timor, right? It doesn't actually have to give up your nationality necessarily or your home address. It can just assert through the query, are you resident here? Yes. Or for, your date of birth. Like if you use your driver's license to get into a nightclub, you have to give it over to the bouncer. He knows your exact date of birth, right? He knows your home address. He knows other information about you that you may not want to give over, while a service like this can just express that you're over 18 and you're allowed in a nightclub, and you don't have to give any more. And so I see that the benefits of the blockchain for identity are both the weaknesses. The fact that it's distributed makes it resilient, but the distributed nature means no central logging. And this actually is a specific problem in your enclave. I cannot pronounce its name, but you can look for this UN report about sort of the evils of having a blockchain-based identity being used as a national identity service. And this is an instance where I thought that outsourcing an identity service, the only bad thing that came from that is that money left your country and went to a foreign organization in the management of that, and that you didn't build the knowledge to run your own systems, right? So the longer this happens, the less people in Timor understand how their own identity is managed, and the more reliant they become on a system they're not in control of. That's what I thought the dangers were. This is even worse. This service, they overcame the payment problem. They decided to run the service for free. That's a really good idea. But why are they running the service for free? It's actually because as Timor was entering ASEAN, the value of your identities is now really high, right? Usually I always thought you'd go after an Australian identity, because an Australian identity, we're predominantly rich, we have credit cards linked to our identities, or you go after a Spaniard, or you go after someone from Japan, right? They've got money behind their identity, and that's what you want to go after. In this instance, they were going only after the identities, and this is so that they could traffic people between ASEAN countries with Timorese credentials. And like, wow, criminals, they find the best use cases for technology, right? And so, you know, I'm not that criminal mind. I couldn't think of that as a great way of doing things. But in the academic space, we developed 2 services that focused on delegated identity. And this is because we wanted the control to be down at the institutions where staff and students live. And so eduroam was the first service created. So it's a Wi-Fi service for research education, no splash screens, no pre-shared keys, no anything like that. Secure, over-the-air secure Wi-Fi that you can take and use everywhere. And so, you know, with a username format that was initially popular, but now increasingly device-specific accounts. So you don't have users just typing their username and password into any Wi-Fi system that comes along. And so eduGAIN became our federated identity service. This is for authentication through web apps. It uses SAML as the technology to talk between endpoints, and it uses attributes about you. All the way from just authentication, this person got their username and password right, through to this person is from UNTL, through to a whole suite of information about this person. And the idea is information minimization. So instead of know your customer, a lot of the people in the federation space, organizations like journals, they actually don't want to know about you. They don't want the risk of storing information about you, particularly in Europe, because Europe has some quite harsh legislation about this information leaking. And so they want to know that your institution has paid the bill for you to access a service, but they actually don't need to have any other information about you, because it's safer for them. If that information leaks, all a hacker would get is this opaque list of people from particular organizations, and you couldn't link it with real people. So, this is what we did in academia, delegated through to the research networks and to the institutions. The technology is standardized, but you can implement it with a suite of open source and closed source products as you see fit, and you can make a more complex deployment as you want. So you can do 2-factor authentication, or just username and password. You can use OpenLDAP, you can use Keycloak, you can use a whole range of tools to make this service useful. And then the trust fabric that binds all of these indicates membership. So this is an example. This is eduroam and at your campus infrastructure. So the box is what a campus would look after. So that's how they authenticate users locally. And then for the roaming operator, this is the infrastructure that they run to tie other institutions together. And the authentication options are quite vast. So each institution can actually implement their own authentication method. This is just a table from Deploying Radius to show what kind of authentication mechanisms you'd use depending on how you store usernames and passwords. So you get this quite wide suite of options. And so the eduroam hierarchy, you have the top level eduroam service, you have a country code, top level domain-based roaming operator, and then the campus, you know, the new thing that a campus does is they have to manage user accounts, which they might not for an existing Wi-Fi service. But since Caesar was talking about the development of this schools management system, and Ramon talked about using Open LDAP and Keycloak, there's many instances where institutions would have these kind of tools available, and they can mix and match whatever they currently use to make it work with these systems. You don't need everybody to use exactly the same system for deployment. This is a graph of the UK produced by Janet so that they could look at the flow of eduroam traffic to see where people move. And the issue is, although it's called eduroam, most roaming is local. Most people stay within their country, most people use their home institution, or they go to nearby institutions, or when they travel. And so the idea of eduroam is everyone is, well, largely the government is supplementing research and education connectivity. And so eduroam allows people to use that connectivity when they move elsewhere in the country. And so, yeah, this improves, and this is a stepping stone for Campus ID, because once you have this service where people are moving, they then want to access services that are deployed. And so some people don't like the idea of roaming. They think it's bad, or we don't go anywhere. And we hear this a lot, but the proof is people move around a lot more than you know. And when you're just giving out guest accounts, you don't have that sense of whether people move. And some people, mobile phones are getting increasingly cheap, right? But your laptop doesn't have cellular. My iPad doesn't have cellular. So my only option is Wi-Fi when I move around. And so, you know, a mobile phone's not always a solution. I'm a cheapskate, and so I've not paid for mobile data while I'm in Timor. And so I only have Wi-Fi. And then roaming is a bonus here, because not only does eduroam predates open roaming becoming a service. Open roaming actually uses all of the technology that eduroam had embedded. And so govroam and cityroam as services have come after that. So I really hope that there'll be a push for the next place that eduroam appears on the map is in Timor. And so, yeah, so govroam, cityroam are services that you can use. So if you have government agencies, if you have health, if you have these complementary services, you can get them all involved in a roaming service that's interoperable. You can even make eduroam and govroam interoperable as you see fit. So this is not an impossible thing to do. And particularly for government connectivity, the government is paying for all of this. Is there demand for eduroam? I don't know. This was my most recent failed attempt at getting money out of ISIF Asia. And I'm not blaming the reviewers, because, you know, there's many great projects that get supported, but I wasn't able to make a compelling case to push this project over the line. And so if Timor is unable to fund it, one option is for us to try again next year to see if we can convince ISIF Asia to support a roaming service. And so this is on a path to more identity. So this is a map of where eduGAIN is. This is the Federated Identity Service. We have more than 75 federations across the globe participating, and this is based on SAML as its web single sign-on. And there's a lot of services in the federation that are actually free. And they're often free because those that host it are willing to give it away to research and education, They just don't want to manage guest accounts. So if you come along and say, I want to get access to this free service of yours, they'll say, join with a federation, yes. If you want us to manage a guest account, the answer is no, because it's just too, it's problematic. They don't know you. They don't operate a help desk in a time zone when you're awake. You know, there's lots of reasons that federation is an improvement, particularly in academia. There's an identity course that I'm supposed to be working on for NSRC, and so I'll show a bit where you can sort of request NSRC's help in working on that, but there's a lot of content that's already available on deploying a federation. And if Timor-Leste invests in this, you start to build up this national independence. You can use open source tools or closed source tools. You can build an understanding of these technologies, and you can use them beyond research and education. You can use them within industry, you can use them within government. And so there's a value in your students, your future employees, actually learning this technology and building systems based on this. And so, yeah, this is just an example of the federations that exist, across the planet. And so I do not have I have the Portuguese Federation here, but I do not have the Brazilian Federation, I don't think. CAFE? Actually, I think CAFE is the Brazilian Federation with the coffee cup. So I do have them. So there's, federations that are, complementary to the research and education goals of Timor-Leste. Within the NSRC, this is a picture, this is me, slightly better shaven, but of an event in the Philippines. So NSRC runs training and direct engineering assistance programs in startup areas. This is where they've done work. You'll notice there isn't a little push pin in Timor-Leste. And so things that are popular that I have seen are the Campus Network Design and Operations course, as well as Network Monitoring and Management. And these are complementary to the work that ISOC does and the work that APNIC training does. They're not competitive, right? The sun will explode before we're able to train all of the necessary people to do this work, right? So you don't have to pick one or the other. Find out who is most readily able to come out and help you. And there's also BG. So people who know Philip Smith, if you've met Philip, he'll be at a lot of the events that you attend. He does a lot of the BGP advanced training and IXP work. There's also this direct engineering assistance. So often along with training, NSRC people will work with you to find out direct things that are wrong with the structure of your campus. The event that I went to in the Philippines, there was this photo of a huge pile of equipment they actually pulled out of someone's network in order to make it better. Because as their network had evolved over time, they had added kludges to the network to make it, to make it operational, but that just actually made it worse. And so, you can go to see the direct engineering assistance requestment documents at this URL and both request training and request support for them from the NSRC. So I guess the only question now is the path that Timor-Leste will choose, right? Do you want to continue to go down the blockchain route that has sort of failed you, at least in your enclave, or do you want to try and build an identity system rooted in your academia, something that you can know and understand and manage and be responsible for, and grow a local industry of people that are expert in looking at it? And so, we don't have time for questions, I presume. Well, even if we did, we want to recover those extra 7 minutes to try and get out here a little bit earlier. And so the only question that's probably on your mind is why I've titled this Kajupa. Kajupa is my boat. This is my boat. It's named after a Tibetan deity, which means the destroyer of obstacles. But instead of spending $1,000 on my boat, I chose to come here to try and convince you to do something about identity. But if you know anyone who wants to pay me to do this work, then please get in touch. Otherwise, oh, is this, no, how do I, oh, the little one goes backwards. You can email me or WhatsApp me and yeah, ask questions. Thanks, people.
Thank you, Brook. And please stay on the stage. Kami convida mau Z10 atau entrega paiso.
I'm getting a North Melbourne scarf.